Hello and welcome. You are watching the Week in Review. I am Ade Darami, and here to go through the stories with me on this week's program, as happened last week, Mr. Mohammed Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, welcome to the program.
As ever, Ade. I like being here.
And I like Mr. Mboj being here. And we like you, the viewers, being here, and thank you for all the compliments. But if you're watching us for the first time, this is what it's all about. It's called the Week in Review, and we take 10 big stories from the week just gone by that we think are interesting, and we hope you will find interesting too. So stories like what, I hear you ask? Well, for example, His Excellency the President has opened a spate of new health clinics around the country. He's also opened up some schools, some of which are newly built, some of which are refurbished. Also, on a more serious note, we go abroad. Iranian president was killed in a helicopter crash. Also, there's a story from DR Congo where there was an attempted coup, a botched attempted coup. And also back home here in the Gambia, there have been attempts to repeal the ban on FGM. Well, some people are not taking it lying down, no pun intended. Now, let's get cracking, shall we? Well, first one, His Excellency the President, Adama Barrow, has just gone on a kind of brief sort of mini tour visiting industrial sites, but also some schools and some hospitals and clinics that have been newly built. Here's one of them. Have a look.
My government is committed to advancing the health sector through strategic investments and partnerships, revitalizing, expanding and upgrading existing health facilities nationwide, particularly in underserved areas, while constructing new ones for those with limited access.
We heard His Excellency the President talking about expanding, upgrading, particularly underserved areas. Mr. Mboj, this is one that has generated a lot of discussion. What's been your take on it?
I said, of course, we need to do these things, underserved and unserved.
Yeah,
There are some
in
areas,
some cases.
and he mentioned this as well. And I understand that in Selekenya, some 14,000 beneficiaries in surrounding areas and the like.
Yes.
Of course, this is what we need to do. I'm not sure what kind of controversy this sort of thing can really generate, as it were.
And this kind of sort of tells me a lot about the Gambia that I now live in, that people can make something like this controversial. Been posts on Twitter and Facebook saying, and so what? Well, if you live in those communities, as you said, a hospital, a clinic that would serve possibly 14,000 people, for them it's a big deal. Some of those people, not all of them, but some of them pay their taxes, and they're wondering, well, where do my taxes go? Well, this is where your taxes go. This is what government is meant to do with the taxes that you pay, and build schools, build roads, build hospitals, and so on. And really, that's what the government are delivering on. They're doing what they're supposed to do.
Absolutely. So if the argument was put in this way, that really for a solution to health issues, wanting the outcome of people getting efficient services, as it were, it takes a whole lot of things to come right in a whole cluster of pillars or planks, whatever you call it. So the physical infrastructure is one aspect.
Indeed.
The equipment, the staffing, and all the rest of it will have to come. If one should frame it in that way, I'll say, yes, I understand. It will take more than the building of a simple physical thing. It takes more than that.
Exactly.
But again, by thinking that, they will probably not provide the other aspects, therefore there's nothing to this, that's also a flawed argument.
Well, this is it. And for me, when we kind of got deeper into the debate, what I said was that what I would concede is that, not just in the Gambia, but in many African countries that I've visited or lived in, there's a kind of poor maintenance culture. So they will build a spanking brand new hospital with all gleaming equipment. But when you go there, if you went to a hospital in the UK, for example, there's actually a technical section whose job solely is to look after and maintain the equipment. If it breaks down, you ring somebody, they come and fix it. And I was asking the question, are we doing the same in the Gambia? in this week alone, His Excellency has opened 6 new hospitals. Now, what people need to ask and check in 6 months or a year's time, all this gleaming equipment, which, he'll forgive me for saying so, our colleague Mahmoud Lamin Choi was quite impressed by. Will he still be impressed in a year's time? Because all of the equipment is working, and even when there's been a problem, somebody has been there to fix it. That's what we need to do, kind of build on that maintenance culture. It would have been nice if somebody had said, well as the gleaming equipment, we're making sure that there are technicians and their personnel to keep this running and not gather dust in a year or 6 months' time.
In preparing for this program, I read the Ministry of Health's, what they call, is it Health Statistics Report? And it tells about all of these things. The one I read was published, released in 2021. And it says that one of the problems they face is the deterioration of physical infrastructure. Everybody really knows this, even they know it. So now, for me, the challenge is administrators. It's really, in the end, an administrative issue. It seems to me that administrators we have simply want to manage the status quo. What is the status quo? Every so often, you know what I mean, buildings, whatever, fall into disrepair.
Well, this is it.
This is what the issue is. So this is the case, a challenge for everybody, really. How do you foster that culture of maintenance? For some of us of a certain age, we've seen how over the years institutions, places have all deteriorated. Then you wonder.
Well, this, you don't know the half of it, Mr. Mboj. My mother's sister, Auntie Koni, was once matron of the government hospital in Bo, which is Sierra Leone's second city. I used to go and visit her there, and this is no lie or no exaggeration. That hospital was so spanking new and clean all the time that when I used to go there, I used to be scared to even step on the floor. And I mean that. I was about 13, 14, maybe up to the age of about 15. When I went there 10 years ago, we were actually in the compound. And imagine, I actually went to school less than half a mile from that hospital. I didn't even recognize I was in the same place. Such was the disrepair into which it had fallen. I literally wept, and I don't say this as a kind of melodramatic thing. Literally, I wept because I could not believe that this place that my aunt was so proud of, that you would almost walk on tiptoes. And why? Because we don't have this maintenance culture. It should not have come to that sort of thing. So yes, we can build all these brilliant things, we can put all the equipment, but unless we're also staffing it with the people to maintain it, it's all for naught.
That is why some people say that really you cannot have this so-called institutional reform, because really that's what we need for these things to come into effect, without having a thought reform. All change really begins in the mind. It is really cognitive development that leads to all other sorts of development, including economic. So one must realize this. So there is, yes, that is true. There's not that culture, as it were, in the public space anyway, because privately, see individuals doing all sorts of things.
How do we inculcate it briefly before we go to the next story? I know it's a difficult question.
No,
possibly.
It's going to be asymmetrical. You'll have the revolutionary, the innovator, or whatever, the exemplary, then afterwards that will trickle, diffuse outwards. So it's going to take that administrator, I think it's essentially that, with that kind of mindset, with that imagination and the toughness. Change hurts. That is why we don't want it. So I must be able to inflict pain.
There you are, even though we're talking about hospitals, but thank you, Mr.
Absolutely. You see?
and that takes us nicely onto the next story, because again, it's about infrastructure that any country that's serious about progressing needs to have. What am I talking about on this occasion? I'm talking about schools. Have a look at this one and you'll know exactly what I mean.
Excellency's agenda to promote quality education in rural Gambia. To ensure every Gambian, no matter where you are born, you have access to quality education. And this is what it is. And thanks to Holland Foundation support, working with the Gambian government, this signifies that. This is symbolic. And I think education is very important. And the President, His Excellency, prioritizes basic education. It is the foundation for any development.
We heard the Information Minister there, Mr. Mboj. Now, we've tried to drag MRC Holland onto our platform many times to kind of thank them, but also to get people to hear about the work they've done in terms of building and refurbishing schools across the country. 30% of the schools across the country can be attributed to them. That's a significant number. And that was another one that was being inaugurated 3 school in one go. And we keep saying this, and it's not just a cliche. Education is key. And of course, the atmosphere in which you learn is also key. We can't have people sitting on the floors, or 60 and 70 in a classroom, because you don't have space. You need conducive environment.
When he was opening the health clinic in Salekenya, he said that through strategic partnerships, through partnerships, strategic investments and partnerships.
Yeah.
This is the kind of partnership we're seeing with MRC Holland. Given the stage of our development right now, we need to be having these things, obviously. And in our clip there, we heard the Minister of Information, Dr. Ismail Assise, talking about the President wants to provide quality education.
In rural, particularly
in rural areas. And to which I said, yes, but you know as well as I do, just as we said with the health clinics, it takes more than
just the building.
It is a stepping stone.
Quite.
So let's be modest in really what we've achieved so far.
Yes, to take another cliche, a house is not a home.
A house is not
just
a home,
building.
It's just a building.
It's what you do inside that makes
so
it.
That turns it into a home.
Yeah,
that's exactly the key.
Yeah.
And in our news report, we've got a clip of Henrietta Sonko, the head of MRC Holland, saying that within a week they want to open 26 schools.
That's right.
That was very interesting. So absolutely, all out education, health, energy, infrastructure. This is what you expect really the government to do.
That's their job.
That's their job. And you have certain development economists will tell you that perhaps African governments or sort of governments around the world who are in a sort of similar stage of development focus on providing essentials.
Quite, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, quite.
Education, health, the infrastructure to move people to move about, energy, water, stuff like that.
Sure.
And then the rest of it, perhaps this is where private sector can come in. Look, QCL's got 5G.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean? And look at the state of the country in other areas. So, as a government, I must know where to focus, and other areas I leave it to private sector, isn't it?
This is true.
Then instead of sometimes they go on these sort of vanity projects or thinking that they can generate more dynamism in certain sectors. And, you know, we talk about Ministry of Tourism. When they say they want to invest in ecology, please, you don't do that. Have the policy and help private sector invest in that. Put that money into something else, education, health, and that sort of thing.
So education, a big obsession of mine, and great to see what's happening, and that there be more, but also, as you said, it's more about the buildings and the structures. It's what goes on inside them. That's what is going to make the difference. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to a rather somber story. Just recently we concluded the OIC summit here in the Gambia, and the Iranian president up to the last moment was expected to be here. In the end, he wasn't. And then just a few days later came news of a helicopter crash in which he died. Have a look and have a listen.
The burnt wreckage of the helicopter which crashed on Sunday was carrying President Raisi, Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian, and 6 other passengers, including government officials and crew, was found early on Monday after an overnight search in very bad weather conditions. Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian was in the Gambia less than 3 weeks ago to attend the Organization of Islamic Cooperation Summit, where he held bilateral talks with Mamadou Tangara, the Gambia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, on the sidelines of the OIC summit. While in the Gambia, Minister Amir Abdullahian took the opportunity to hold talks with his Turkish counterpart, The 63-year-old former judiciary chief succeeded Hassan Rouhani following a landslide victory in 2021. The turnout was just under 49%.
There we heard the death of the Iranian president, and I mentioned he was not at the OIC, but his foreign minister was, and just a few days later he was also on board that helicopter which crashed in quite severe weather conditions. I mean, a story that's been reported, shall I say, in a mixed way around the world, Mr. Mboj.
Absolutely. But afterwards, the responses of a good number of presidents in Africa, that was quite interesting. South Africa, Ghana, and others, Tinubu of Nigeria and all the rest of it. Because Iran, of course, is a significant player in world politics.
Very much.
Particularly what is happening right now.
Well, indeed.
You know,
because they are supposedly the funders of Hamas in Gaza Strip, and of course we all know what's happening there. Yes.
Absolutely. So a good number of us were touched or realized the significance, because it matters with Iran who is in power. His brand, his model, as it were, you know, what he represented, either a progressive voice or conservative voice. We are always on the lookout, on the shades of political opinion. So that was significant, really. So that was why I think most around the world, you know, I said, oh, who were comfortable at least with his model, really missed him. So now the uncertainty, who's going to replace him?
And will they carry on his policies?
Would they carry
because
on his policies?
I said that some of the reactions, so for example, the BBC got a lot of flack from a lot of right-wing newspapers, particularly in England and in America, for saying that reaction to his death has been mixed. In fact, what they wanted the BBC to say was to call him a butcher, the butcher of Tehran, and use phrases like that. And the reason the BBC had said it was mixed was because, shocking though it may seem, when news came through that he had in fact died, because at first it was uncertain, people in Iran, including in the capital, set off fireworks in celebration at his death. Because there has been a kind of contestation of the kind of Islamic revolution, you know, which came in 1979 and kind of kicked out the Shah of Iran. So I think the BBC were right to say it was mixed. And when you see the millions that have attended, when you consider all the various 3 places where the funeral procession took place, people added up to millions, all in black, of course. Then it was mixed.
But this is it, Adam, because what happens within the inner dynamics, we are not privy to that. We will read the newspaper stories, we'll get all of that, but we don't really get that emotional feel, emotional connection, unless, of course, perhaps I have a family, member of my family I'm living in there. So with me as a journalist writing from the Gambia, well, I'm going to have to put in what others are saying as well. I'm writing from outside. So yes, obviously you're bound to get this mixed reaction, given that Iran is a significant player, and it matters. And really
what was instructive to see, and it's probably we saw some elements of it during the summit, was that you had people from both Shia and Sunni divide of Islam coming together. I saw them physically in front of my, embracing. And so the messages of condolence that have come, that have flooded in, have been across that divide. People haven't said, oh, you know, he's Shia, I'm not going to send condolences. They've reached out in that way, and who knows where this might lead. But I think the big debate is who follows him, and do they carry on his policies.
They're smart enough to realize that never mind the theological differences, they share similar political problems.
This is it.
So you come together to sort out your political problems. Sure. So they are sophisticated enough to be doing stuff like that. I think in this accident, the foreign minister, you know, I was thinking, I wonder how Dr. Tangara responded, given that very recently, you know, because they had that bilateral.
Yes, I mean, his ministry, foreign ministry, did put out a kind of quite heartfelt press release, which kind of was more personal than you would expect in a press release, because of course he spent time with him and had bilateral meetings with him whilst he was here. So
Absolutely.
he must have felt it more than most, of course, in the Gambia.
And even others, staff or at the hotel, stuff like that.
Right.
So you just never know the people, sort of he struck conversations with and sort of maybe left a mark, and suddenly you are told this, and then I wondered, the random contingencies of life.
Well, you say random, and yet, of course, there have been conspiracy theories. And I even had to say to one colleague, I said, I once was giving a talk about this kind of, the kind of East versus West. And I said, if an American president stubbed his toe, fell down and died, somebody would say China did it or Russia did it. We live in that kind of world where accidents no longer happen to heads of state. That are sort of mysterious or unpredictable. They are people. Planes crash, helicopters crash, including ones carrying presidents. It can happen. They don't all have to be a sinister hand behind it. But that people don't have to take my word from it. They can go on and see the debate already that's been raging online. Yeah.
That's it. So for me, this is how I sort of deal with these things. I hear a story. Okay, I have to take it on face value. I wasn't there. Then somebody else comes and said, actually, that didn't happen. Okay. I said, all right, what do you base that on?
This is it.
You see, either you tell me give me facts regarding the specific case.
Yeah, quite.
For me, that is really what does it.
Quite.
But otherwise, what you get is, well, given their relationship, given the Israelis, we know them, by innuendo and suggestion, that is not evidence. That is for kids to take, you know what I mean? Right. So with me, I'm perpetually open to ideas and suggestions, but they have to pass what I call the common sense test.
This is it. And for me, I don't think so far it does. Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now on to another matter, and another serious matter here in the Gambia. Recently, in recent months, there have been attempts to repeal this country's ban on FGM. Should it succeed, the Gambia will make history as being the first country where such a ban has been repealed. However, some people are not leaving it up to just the National Assembly members. Have a look and have a listen.
Globally, there are more than 230 million girls and women who have undergone female genital mutilation in 30 countries in Africa, the Middle East and Asia. The founder of Safe Hands for Girls appeals to the authorities not to politicize the FGM issue.
I know that there's a lot of people that are saying that the doctors, it's all fabricated, it's all fake news. We continue to hear all of that. But I am appealing to your humanity. I am appealing to each and every one of you to open your hearts and open your ears and know that everything that has been presented to you, look at it and ensure that even you can do your own site visits, whether it's visiting hospitals in the Gambia and ensuring that you see what you need.
And we heard there from Jaha Dukure, and I have to say now, in case anybody thinks it's a cop-out, there are bits of that report that I could have played, but some of it is quite graphic. But I took in sort of cognizance that this show is watched by a family audience, and I did wonder whether people might say, oh, why did you show that? Or why did you allow that to be heard? It's a bit graphic. Well, it's a serious and it's a graphic matter. But Mr. Mboja said before that should this pass National Assembly and get presidential assent, the Gambia will be the first country in the world to overturn such a ban.
Absolutely. The phrase I have here is graphic account. Absolutely. And then the question came back. Then I thought, what was meant to be achieved by sealing her up?
Yeah, quite.
That sort of thing. So that was really the question that sort of
because that's
came to
kind
mind.
of the bit that I left out. But yeah,
of
I mean,
course.
I could have played it.
That's
in fact,
really
originally it was in the bit that I cut.
That is the heart of the matter, isn't it? Because really the whole point of these groups meeting the select committee was, as we said in our report to provide insight and testimonies,
This is it.
and then for them to get that part. Then I ask the second question: what we have, is it a factual issue? Is it that people do not know? Is that really the issue? Or there are other biases,
Yeah, that's
cognitive bias or whatever,
Yes.
certain values really through which you evaluate everything.
Well,
It
this is
doesn't
it.
matter what I tell you, what I give you,
Sure.
still you're not going to change your mind.
I think that's why Jaha was saying that we're appealing to your humanity, because we are not people. And she got quite angry, although in her own calm way, that, you know, I resent the fact that people say I'm doing this for money. I know the pain I went through. And the people who want to repeal this seem to think that my pain and the pain of others like me does not matter because of their beliefs, because of tradition or whatever they want to bring up in support of this. We are human beings. Think of us as human beings, and I'm appealing to humanity. Let it stay. You know, yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes, yeah. If putting it that way, so in the end, you think you don't have to do it. You can invoke culture and all the rest of it, because going by Jada Bassar, the country director of Future in Our Hands, the statistics, I like going by the facts.
Yes.
In Basse region, 97%.
Yeah.
Go to Karawan, 42.
Yeah.
So even within the
Within
same
the
group,
Yes,
you
exactly.
have many who have opted not to.
Indeed.
So it is you don't have to. It is not mandatory.
Yeah. It's not mandatory.
You
It's
see,
not compulsory.
it's not
anything.
compulsory and none of that. Even without going into the medical aspects
quite.
Of it all. Now, just normatively, just discuss it on a level of values and the like. So this is it, Ade. When we had the bill on giving quotas to women's representation, it couldn't pass the second reading stage. This one has gone through the second reading stage.
And if you saw the numbers who were lining up to speak, they ran out of time.
So it gives you, it's a reflection of the current mood, really, in the country, what's going on.
Sure.
This reversal would be awful. It has nothing to do with our sovereignty, if it goes through, that is, if it goes through. Got nothing to do with sovereignty, got nothing to do really with culture. We've changed so much.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean?
So things that were acceptable 20, 40 years
now
ago.
they are not.
Yeah,
wasn't it Wole Soyinka who once remarked he was having a discussion with somebody else who had this three-piece suit on and was banging on about African culture, African this. So we've sort of like, you're like, what you wear is a cultural expression. We have changed in so many ways. Sure. So the culture argument is a bit dodgy.
Quite.
How do we decide which ones to take, to adopt, and which ones to just cast aside?
I'm smiling because on a slightly lighter note, I was once at a presentation where I'd been involved in a documentary about the group P Square, the twins, the Nigerian twins. And somebody, it was a Q&A after the thing, and this guy got up and he was blasting the film, saying, look at them, they're all very westernized and so on. I said, gentlemen, can I invite you onto the stage for you to make those remarks? So he came and he repeated them, and I said to the audience, look at this man from head to toe. He's wearing a suit. Everything about him is Western, and yet he's blasting these people saying they're too Western. I said, that's hypocrisy, you know. So, yeah.
There's no self-awareness, either that or the conception of culture is narrow.
Yeah, quite.
That is really what the issue is. They have a very narrow conception of culture, and they really cannot see themselves.
Yeah, indeed. This one, we wait and see whether the select committee has taken on board these concerns that have been raised by Safe Hands for Girls and also Future in Our Hands. And we'll see where this goes. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us on to story number 5, which will also take us to a midpoint where we will have a break. The National Human Rights Commission has recently commemorated 5 years of its existence here in the Gambia. Have they got anything to celebrate? Well, have a listen.
Done a lot of work in the area of capacity building for our security forces. As you know, the TRRC reveals that a lot of the violations were done by the security forces. But that's not the only thing we did. We have worked very closely with civil society. We have I've mentioned the fact that we had established the Saudawda Kairaba Jawara Mood Court competition in collaboration with the University of the Gambia, where we hold competition now. It has gone actually Africa-wide. Universities, we are trying to instill a human rights culture within our law students. But I think another area that we have actually made a lot of impact is our individual complaints mechanism. Anybody can actually walk into the National Human Rights Commission if you feel that your human rights have been violated.
Anyone can walk in if you feel your human rights have been violated and make a complaint, Mr. Mboj. An upward trajectory. It sounds from what we heard from Daniel Juf there that things are improving.
Absolutely. But again, the sentence that really hurt in many ways was we're trying to instill human rights culture. I'm like, this is the home of the Banjul Charter.
This was going to be my question, but I'm glad you got there.
Oh my God, so all these years wasted. Extraordinary. We're only beginning now.
To try to instill.
Oh, this is awful.
And is it because, and this has been one of my criticisms since I landed in the Gambia, that we're quite good at passing laws, validating them at workshops and seminars, and then we just leave them on the shelf to gather dust, including something like the Charter. You look at it, you read it, and you think, why don't we live up to the tenets that are therein?
I think, of course, with us, I will keep on banging on this all the time. We took the wrong turn in 1994.
Sure, of course, of course.
That was the beginning of trampling on the Human Rights Charter. It came from here, the Banjul Charter. We were the ones sort of trampling on a dance. Yaya Jammeh had quite a dance on that document in many ways.
Sure.
So this is the key. So in a sense, you understand what he said. We are having to relearn.
Indeed.
As they say, civilization is constantly being lost and relearned.
This is it.
as it were. This is what we're trying to do. And anybody who looks at the environment today, far removed from what we had gone through, massive improvement. Nobody can ever deny that. But of course, vigilance is the price of what? Liberty, stuff like that. So it's good for the Human Rights Commission to be constantly releasing, publishing reports, what's going on, so that we can be vigilant.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us beautifully to a point where we'll take a commercial break. And we'll be back with 5 more stories, so don't go away. Join us after this break.
Never before in the Gambia, QCell is giving you an unbeatable offer. Activate our 5G network on your 5G-enabled phone and enjoy free internet for 7 days. Yes, you heard that right. Activate QCell's 5G on your phone and experience what true 5G internet feels like. Get your QCell SIM cards activated today at the following care centers: Banjul, Senegambia, Brikama, Bursubi Turntable, Bakau, Airport, and Kairaba Avenue headquarters. Rush now and be part of the future with QCell's 5G. Free internet for 7 days only with QCell. For more information, call QCell Customer Care on 111. QCell Sunyubus. We innovate. Orders follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Are Darmi and you are watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review. And anybody who's just joined us, you've missed 5 cracking stories, but here to go through 5 cracking stories is Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interaction so far.
The pleasure is all mine, Ade.
Thank you, thank you. And so story number 6. There's been a lot of, somebody said I shouldn't use the word wahala. He said it's not English. But when I use it, everybody knows what I mean. Very various interruptions to the ferry service, Banjul Bara. But to some extent, some of the service has been restored. Is everybody happy about that? Have a look and you decide.
The ferry doesn't wait for us to pack our stuff inside because I sell mangoes and the offloading takes time. Because of that, I prefer using the small boats. Also, the fare is cheaper than on the ferry. On the ferry, the ticket is $25 per basket. And with the boat, I can just pay $100, including my fare.
And there we heard our colleague just actually the voice of one of the people who is using these boats. What are these boats? Well, when the ferry service is down, of course, what tends to happen is people use the boats to cross. And there we heard one of the passengers, and of course they say one man's meat is another man's poison. And so when the ferry's out of service, it's roaring business for the boat owners, but when it's back in service, not so good for them.
Mariama Toure,
yes.
When I listened to that piece of news, I thought, no, the ferry is not supposed to wait. You know what I mean? You know, she said that.
There are other passengers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So for some people, out of convenience or cost, because she talks about the fare there as well, out of convenience or cost, so they will get their fair share. The boats will get their fair share of passengers. Only that we even discussed this at the time. Of course, when the ferry is not working, everybody, you know, will have to go to use the boat because they need to go. This is of necessity. So naturally, now that the ferry service is back, so we are not surprised that the traffic, as it were, has sort of slowed down. Sure. But I wondered about something else. I wonder if these boats sort of are certified in one way or another, people's safety, because of the service, the public service that they provide. What are the conditions? Should they have life jackets in there?
Well, I mean, recently,
it will be interesting to know.
Recently, there was a donation of 1,000 life jackets because, you know, some of our development partners were a bit concerned. They'd seen a report on various media about these boats, and they realized that these people actually didn't have life jackets, and so they've donated life jackets to these boat owners to say, look, if you're going to at least let people wear, because sometimes the seas can be particularly rough, particularly during the rainy season.
Anybody who provides public service, really, the state should really make sure that there are certain conditions that you must fulfill.
Sure.
It is the state really that protects us. You know what I mean? I mean, this is why we said earlier, I said there's a challenge to really administrators as well. We just go for the easy options, you know, so much of what we do unregulated. For God's sake, these things must be regulated. But they will start pointing out, oh, we don't have resources, we don't have this, we don't have that. And we all know that, of course, you need money, but really the greater chunk, the decisive chunk to my mind, is that vision and will and imagination with very little. We've seen it, we've got enough experience to know that with little, people have achieved great things.
Indeed.
So it's a lack of ambition.
Sure.
It's just settling for, well, this is what is.
Yeah, and they just leave it at that. Yeah, exactly. Quite. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Bush. And that takes us to story number 7. You know, recently it had been seen that West Africa was the kind of coup sort of central of Africa, but it seems like Central Africa is not giving up. There was a recent attempted coup in DR Congo. What happened? Here's some of what happened.
Some of the suspects, including 2 alleged to be Americans, were soon having been arrested and looking disheveled. DR Congo State Media also alleges that the attackers were led by Christian Malanga, a former minister and former military officer based in the United States, who was also arrested, allegedly along with son. It is also claimed that the father is one of those killed and his son one of those arrested. In a live stream posted on Facebook during Sunday's attack and widely shared since then, Malanga, speaking a mixture of Lingala, French and English, threatening the president and chanted New Zaire. The DRC was formerly called Zaire. Malang's son can be seen next to him alongside several armed men wearing battle dress. Later on, photos released on social media showed Malang's corpse and that of another fighter.
Mr. Mboj, former politician Malang, one has to wonder how serious he was. With about a group of 20 men or so wanted to take over DR Congo. It seemed a particularly foolhardy plot. As we heard there, in fact, at which we heard the audio, because he started off speaking French, then he slipped into Lingala, and then he switched rather into English, saying, "Shisekedi, you must go, dégagez." You know, he was kind of switching within languages. But 20 odd men, you want to take over DR Congo? I mean, what on earth was going on there?
I think we've got more questions than answers.
Honestly.
Who are the people involved?
Yeah,
CIA, you know, you're reading all
this
sorts
is American
of things.
citizens
American citizens
were arrested on
and
the scene.
all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, this place is a mess. Is there anybody around the world who truly understands what's going on with DRC?
Honestly.
Really?
Honestly.
And how far does it go back? When I heard about CIA, then I thought about Lumumba. You know, I'm sure everybody would have done so going back to the 60s. And now we've got enough evidence that they were complicit.
Yeah, this is it.
in his murder in the Belgians. So that place is a mess. The M23 rebels that fight.
You know,
It's an extraordinary situation here. I'm not sure.
Well, this is it. And there was a French politician who had recently visited Dakar, who had also recently visited DR Congo. And as they were giving a press conference, of course, when it came to him and they said, "What do you think of it?" He said, "I blame Rwanda for this." I mean, nobody else, even the Congolese, had not blamed Rwanda for it. And yet he came out, and Mélenchon is the guy's name. Mélenchon completely blamed Rwanda. Of course, since then, of course, investigations are ongoing. Canada, America, whose citizens have been arrested and detained, and in some cases killed in the attempt, are demanding answers as to, you know, including from their citizens, you know, what were you doing there and how did you come to be there? But as you said, it's such a mess that one doesn't know even where to begin.
Absolutely. But again, we'll also, I think, acknowledge the undertone, the Hutu Tutsi undertone.
Well, indeed.
in this area.
Yeah, quite.
Granted, but perhaps instead of blaming Kagame and Rwanda and all of that, can we come with a more conciliatory tone? How do we fix it? They think they can shame him into changing?
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
I do not know. Maybe China can step in.
Yeah,
maybe this is where they can, you know, show their weight, and they will have more authority, perhaps with them than with the West. There's something going on with Western influence in us right now. It's waning. There's nothing there. Perhaps somebody else can step up. Can you bring the leaders together? Perhaps that's where the answer lies, so that they can control things. But right now, as things are, I don't think the West can really have any influence in many ways over there. And it's a mess. Does anybody have any answer? You read all sorts of reports, but nobody seems to have any answer of what to do in the DRC.
It's a shame, and of course, for anybody who doesn't know, the shame is that if it were properly run, it would be one of the richest countries in the world.
Absolutely. Maybe that is the reason it's got so
and that's
much.
Why,
so everybody is fighting for the piece of the pie.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Takes us on to story number 8, and onto a lighter note: music and arts and drama. The Gambia College recently held a cultural music seminar, and rather good it was too. Have a look and have a listen.
Because for a very long time, the art of music was left to only people that are interested in doing it, and they learn it in anyhow. Most of the top people that are into music in this country may not be able to recognize the do from the re or from the mi, but they are playing good music. So if those people are given the high pitches, the low pitches of music, probably it will improve their performance as far as the music industry in this country is concerned.
And though it might sound like it, they weren't downplaying the fact that a lot of brilliant musicians are self-taught. But a lot of musicians who are self-taught think that's enough. But there's a reason why they call it the music business. There's music and there's business. And sometimes they're not aware of the business aspect of it. And this is part of what they were trying to say to them, that you need to consider not just your talent. Your talent alone is probably not going to make you rich. You need to be aware of everything else.
Absolutely, and teaching music in school, for God's sake. Unless in the Western tradition, music is seen in a certain aspect of being an intellectual pursuit.
Yeah, sure.
Isn't it?
Indeed,
it represents, like poetry,
yes.
It represents the highest expression of man's imagination, doesn't it?
Indeed.
It's the royalty of our faculties.
This is it, yes.
that sort of thing. So fantastic. And over the years, how many research papers you've read making this correlation between music and mathematical ability?
Quite.
How many times have you read that sort of thing?
This is true.
You know, so yes, it's important that we bring it back. After all, it is the food of love.
Well, this is it. And this is what makes the world go round. You know, people get together, they fall in love, and guess what? They have children, and so on. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to another thing that Gambians love, of course, football. And Gambia has announced that it has a new head coach for the Scorpions, the national football team. Have a look.
The Ministry of Youth and Sports, through the National Sports Council, collaborated with the Gambia Football Federation's Technical and Development Committee to shortlist and interview 5 coaches from 90 applicants. Mr. McKinstry, age 38, a former Rwanda, Uganda and Sierra Leone boss, has accepted the offer and will sign a 2-year deal effective July 1st, 2024, replacing Belgian coach Tom Sandfeld, who resigned after the Scorpions' elimination at the group stage of the 2023 African Cup of Nations in Côte d'Ivoire. Jonathan McKinstry holds a UEFA Pro license and in August 2014 took Sierra Leone to their highest ever FIFA World Ranking, 50th in the world and 7th in Africa. In 2015, he was voted CECAFA Cup 2015 Coach of the Tournament after his Rwanda team finished second before he won the CECAFA Cup in 2019 with Uganda.
Mr. Mboj, after Tom, we now have Johnny. Johnny McKinstry, former Sierra Leone coach, with an impressive looking CV. Are you excited as a football fan?
I'm not sure, and you know, an Irishman, he'll probably say, Jonathan to you, mister.
Apparently he prefers Johnny.
He prefers Johnny.
All right,
well, an Irishman, that's again, that informality, that sort of thing.
I'm going by his Facebook profile. He's 38 years old,
yes.
So he's quite young.
Yes.
You know, there are 38-year-old people still, I think Ronaldo's now 38 or 39, he's still playing. He's just been, you know, picked for the Portuguese team for the Euros. So, you know, he's young, he's quite young.
Absolutely. I was looking at his CV. This is, you know, anybody would look at his CV. So apparently with Sierra Leone, he gave you your highest ranking in the FIFA rankings. Apparently he did that. Let's go through this. I'm sure you will come back. And when he was in Rwanda as well,
yeah.
They won a sub-regional, East African sub-regional
trophy, which they'd never won before.
That's it. And with Uganda, and he coached in Kenya.
Yes.
You know,
Gor Mahia, one of the biggest teams. They're the kind of Man City or Man United of Kenya.
And they won that sort of thing.
They just won the league.
They just won
year.
the league and stuff like that. So this is it. And he's got a license, pro, whatever.
Sure.
Okay, fine. Granted, for me, some of the greatest coaches never had any of these licenses. I wonder if Sir Alex had any of these licenses.
It wasn't
It's about
compulsory then, it is now in those big leagues. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So for me now, it's about delivery.
Can he deliver? Yeah.
Can he deliver?
Yeah.
What were the criteria of selection? I was thinking, somebody said, well, price matters. You know, none of us knew.
Sure.
It appears as if in recent decades, in recent years, African clubs have been sort of going back to appointing their own nationals.
That's the point I was going to come to.
There was the heyday of mainly French ones. Really, back then they were mainly French coaches
French across the whole of Africa.
Across the whole of Africa.
Sure.
And they're like, so we'll. I don't know, we'll see.
Wait and see, results will tell. I mean, but just in case anybody's wondering, 5 months after he was appointed by Sierra Leone, he was sacked. And why was he sacked? For poor results. So, you know, I reserve my excitement just yet. And of course, when you look at somebody's CV, and I said to one of my colleagues, we were discussing this, I said, there's all of these, but you have to ask, why did he leave? All of the ones he left because the results were poor. He didn't leave because the results were brilliant. But, you know, if I was doing my CV in that same way, I would burnish up all the good bits and leave out all the bad bits. And so I sent him a BBC report which says, Johnny McKinstry sacked after 5 months with Sierra Leone. First chapter, first paragraph says he was sacked because of a series of poor results. So we wait and see.
But this is it. When I heard that, I also thought that is 5 months sort of enough? Especially international football is a different proposition.
He'd been on a kind of sort of trial thing, which was slightly longer. And then when they made it permanent, and was when the results then took a nosedive, which is kind of weird. And they thought, this is not going to happen. And so they got rid of it. But you're right. I mean, 5 months is not enough. But I think they'd seen enough to say that maybe he gave a brilliant interview when he came for the interview, but it's not translated into thing. But having said that, I think what will benefit him and anybody else who takes over the Gambia coaching role now is that the Gambia is blessed with a plethora of really, really good players playing in some serious leagues. Way more than a country like Sierra Leone, which is far bigger, than Guinea, which is far bigger. When you look across the world at some of the world's big leagues, you've got Gambians playing, you know, in Spain, in Italy, in Holland. He's got that to draw on, and so that is will be to his benefit if he can utilize them properly.
That is precisely it. So when I had this discussion the other day about this new coach, and they said, well, with the high-profile ones, we don't have the money and all of that. And I said, to my mind, what is really important is this. Right now, from the ministry, Gambia Football Federation, we can see the potential out there.
Yeah.
What kind of football do we want?
Sure.
Can we get somebody with a similar philosophy?
Sure.
Or get somebody, I will tell you, look at what I've got.
Sure.
What do you think you can produce from this? See, stuff like that.
Sure.
Then on the basis of that, perhaps, because you want something slightly sustainable. With any coach in the world, you have to give them time, really, to form a team.
Yeah.
It is so difficult to form a team.
Sure.
So I must think sustainably. I must think long term.
Sure.
Instead of this little short term stuff. You're not building anything. It takes time to build.
This is what harms Africa greatly. And just very briefly before we go to the next story, I had wondered whether there are several African coaches who have the right credentials in terms of qualifications, and I did wonder if any of them made the short list. We'll never know, but apparently over 90 had applied for the job.
And in the end, they're shortlisted five. And then out of that, so this is it. So it will be interesting to know the selection process, how these things go, and what are the most important factors.
Sure.
Here there will be many that tipped it in his balance, and that sort of thing, really.
Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And that takes us to our final story. And Turkish embassy here in the Gambia recently held something called a cuisine week. What's that? Have a look.
Ferry Turka Oba, Turkey's ambassador to the Gambia, describes it as a culinary diplomacy and said the cuisine week helps to bring people closer to Turkey.
This year's theme is about the Aegean coast. You know, Aegean coast is also it's the fusion of history, of nature, of culture. So there are lots of similarities also with it's next to the sea with the Gambia. So lots of seafood, lots of herbs. And vegetables as well. The olives, for example, olive oil is very well known. So this is a way to show our good friends, Gambian friends, different tastes, and also some, for example, shrimps that you use a lot, trying to show it in a different way, revisiter, if you want. So this is what we are trying to do with this week, and to present our culture as well.
There we have it. They said try not to politicize everything, but apparently this was initially the idea of the First Lady, Mrs. Erdogan, and they described it as culinary diplomacy. And you know, we were talking about music earlier. People say kind of music is the universal language, but perhaps food, Mr. Mboj, is the universal language.
Absolutely, and Turkish food, isn't it? Flavors. I used to go to Edgware Road.
Yeah.
Lots of Turkish
restaurants in London, by the way.
In London,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So the spices.
Well, this is it. I've been to Turkey three times, and I can tell you I love the food as well.
But it made me wonder when they said culinary diplomacy, and I said, so you mean our relationship will be flavorful? What would it look like?
Yeah, what would it taste like?
What would it taste like? Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
And do we have any Turkish restaurants here?
I did wonder that, actually.
Yes.
I did wonder.
Now, that would be interesting.
Chinese, India,
you know, you've got all of this. So it's time, if that is really what we want to do, culinary diplomacy. And then the cultural aspects, the Aegean culture, he mentioned there. Then perhaps have a few restaurants here.
Sure.
Then that would really cement this culinary diplomacy.
Thank you, and as long as they invite us to sample, we'll be well happy with that.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of the program. It just leaves for me to say, Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interjections.
Cheers.
And of course to you, the viewers, thank you for watching. Until the next time, we'll come your way, same time next week. Bye for now.